Welcome back. Today I'm going to be making fried chicken, which is without a doubt my most requested recipe. And what makes my recipe special is that we are going to be using beef tallow to fry the chicken in. And I always make sure to buy pasture-raised organic chicken. And by doing this, we are going to keep this entire meal a saturated fat. What can make fried chicken very unhealthy for you are all of the seed oils and the polyunsaturated fats, or PUFAs. So we are going to get started by seasoning this flour. Now, I have used a gluten-free flour blend. I always want to make sure that my flour is organic and that it doesn't have any additives such as iron and whatnot. You just want plain organic flour of whatever type you like. And we're going to use salt and pepper to season this today. Quite a bit of salt, actually. If you don't season your flour, then you will find that your fried chicken just tastes like flour, which is not very good. So you have options. I'm doing just salt and pepper. But depending on what you are going to be serving this with, you could add other flavors. It's very common to add something like cayenne pepper as well. This is going to take a long time because I like to use freshly cracked pepper. So bear with me. All right. And now we're going to give this a stir. Sort of incorporate. And if you are ever wondering, do I have enough salt in my flour? The best thing to do is just taste it. And if you can barely taste the salt, or if maybe it tastes just like flour, that's how you know to add more or not. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is start to season our chicken. So you wanna get a nice even coating of salt on your chicken on both sides. If you have the time, and if you think about it, seasoning your chicken the night before always makes it taste so much better. So I have a combination of breasts and thighs here. You also have the option to do bone in. I'm just generally always cooking for children, and my children prefer boneless and skinless. I'm going to try to get a nice even coating of salt. So I'm going to get one side salted, and then lay that salt side down in this flour. So I've chosen this pan for dredging my chicken because I can fit a lot in here, and I'm just trying to be efficient. So it's much easier to get an even coating of salt if you hold your hand up high. If your hand is super close down to the chicken, then you have a better chance of getting clumps of salt rather than a nice even coating. All right, and now I'm going to season this side. So now I have an even coating of salt on both sides. I'm just going to press the chicken down here into the flour, just in case there are any air pockets, and then turn it over. And bread the other side. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is fill my cast iron skillet with beef tallow. So one of the reasons that I'm using beef tallow is because it has the highest burn temperature. And so, you know, butter, for example, because it has the milk solids in it, will start to burn at a much lower temperature, and that will then burn your food. Whereas beef tallow has the highest burn temperature. And so when you're doing something like frying, you have less of a chance of burning your food. And like with all the recipes that are coming out of the Peace Offering Kitchen, we like to use saturated fats, or fats that have the lowest amount of polyunsaturated fats as possible. All right, now I'm just going to take this over and start heating it up on the stove. This is preset to a high heat. And I like to fry my chicken in a cast iron skillet. It's just very important that you find a skillet that is non-toxic. And if your skillet has a bunch of scratches in it, then it is sort of leaching toxins into your food. So it's very important to try very hard not to scratch your pans. And this is why I usually use wood, one of the many reasons, but because it doesn't scratch the bottom of the pan. So as you can see, this is starting to melt quite quickly. I'm going to bring the chicken over. So we're just going to have to go by look for how hot we think this oil is. The other option you have is to take a little bit of flour and put it in your oil, and if it starts to sizzle, then you know it's ready to fry. But you're always playing with this delicate balance of you don't want it to get too hot, and cooking it at a lower temperature is generally healthier. It is so important to make sure that there's absolutely no water in your pan when you are frying, because if there's any water in there, it's going to pop and explode out on you. So I'm going to test this oil to see if it's ready for frying. And you can see how it's sizzling. It means that it's ready. So it's also important when you're frying that when you lay something down, you lay it away from you rather than laying it towards you so the oil comes back and splatters all over your body. So I'm going to take this chicken, dab it down to see if it sizzles, and it does. Amazing. And then lay it away from me. You can never be in a hurry when you're frying. Just take your time. Give space between each. You don't want to crowd the meat too much. So I'm sort of shaking off the excess flour before I set it in the pan. So I'm going to try not to disturb this and just flip it one time. So a nice tip when you are now dealing with this pan of flour, do not get it wet, because this flour is just going to turn into a paste and it's going to be such a beast to clean. So instead, try to dump out the flour as much as you can into the garbage can or compost if you have it, before you try to wash it. So I'm going to take this away. All right, I'm going to adjust a couple of these slightly just to have adequate spacing between them. It's always important to keep your distance. There's no sense sticking your face over the frying pan. There's nothing worse than an oil burn. So stay back as much as you can. I never let my children run behind me. Everyone knows that when mommy's frying, we evacuate the kitchen. No dogs allowed either. If this starts to get too hot, I'll move it to this lower temperature burner. So you can start to see around the edges that this one is turning brown. Here too, this edge is turning brown. And just in a few more minutes, I'll flip it. So white meat generally cooks a lot faster than dark meat. And boneless meat cooks a lot faster than bone-in meat. And these happen to be thin cut breasts. And so I think that these are going to cook quite a bit faster than the thighs, which have not been cut thin. So you can see this has gotten, you wouldn't want it to get any browner than that. So I think I'm going to move this over just for a little while to regulate the temperature. If you have a gas burner, you could just turn it down at this point. And this is an interesting time to see what part of your pan has a hot spot versus not. Because how interesting that this guy and this guy are hardly cooked while these middle guys are more burned. And so that makes me want to take him and flip him this way, because I'm realizing that the center of my pan is hotter than the exterior. So I'm going to flip him as well. And then perhaps center this a bit differently. But now I can see by the rapidness of the boil that this is already starting to cool down significantly. So in just another minute, I'll put it back on the hob. So the only real way to know if this is done, you could have a meat thermometer, which would test to 165, or you can cut it open. Another way to guess is by touching it, because the meat will seize up as it is when it becomes well done. And so If it still is mushy, like this one, I think is not yet done. However, this guy is hard to the touch, and so I'm pretty sure he is done. Check the other side for browning. Not as brown as I would like, but I do, judging by his stiffness, think he is done. So I'm going to take him off, shake off the excess oil, and then set it aside. They also do continue to cook a little bit once you've taken them out of the oil. So I'm going to move this guy more to the center where I think the pan is a little bit hotter, as well as maybe this guy. So I'm thinking this smaller of the chicken thighs, judging by the stiffness of him, is done. I'm going to give this one another flip. So it's this. And maybe also this guy. All right, these guys are all finished. So I'm going to take them off and put them in this pan. Then I'm going to get this off of the heat as quickly as possible. And then also just get it as far out of the way as possible. This smells so good. Okay, let's plate it up. So beautiful. Thank you for joining.